Hey, what's up? My name is Sade Brown, and I have a word of wisdom from the Lord for you today, coming from Psalms 32, verses 7 through 9. I got my Bible. Let me read it to you right quick. All right? Verses 7 through 9 says, "You are my hiding place. You shall preserve me from trouble. You shall surround me with songs of deliverance. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will guide you with my eye. Do not be like the horse or like the mule, which have no understanding, which must be harnessed with bit and bridle, else they will not come near you." The word I have for you today is this: it's beneficial to be obedient to God. It's beneficial to be obedient to God. I'm a living testimony. If you do what God tells you to do, He will bless you. Let me give you a real life example of something that I struggled with for 11 years, something that broke my heart. And when I finally listened to God, He not only removed me from that situation, but He blessed me tremendously in the aftermath of everything. Trust me, it blew my mind. I was struggling before then, wondering if God was real. But after this situation and after everything was said and done, I knew God was real. And there was no way in hell that I could deny it. All right? So, 2008, my mom was terminally ill with kidney failure, and her doctors put her in hospice care. During this time, I actually befriended the mother of a close friend of mine who's twice my age. So I was 21 at the time. She must have been 41, 42. All right. She was such a kind woman, y'all. She was so kind. She would invite me to her house during this hard time for me. And I would stay over, and it would get my mind off everything that was going on. She would also allow me and my friends to drop her off at work because I didn't even have my license at the time. So we would drop her off at work, and then we would take her car to visit my mom at hospice. And I literally fell in love with this woman. At such a tough time in my life, I thought that she was a surrogate mother. And I saw it as God was, even though my natural mother was leaving me, and even though I was sad and I was depressed about that because I was 21 and my whole life I had planned for my mom to be at my wedding. I had planned for her to be there when I had kids. And at 21, I realized, hey, this stuff is not going to happen. So I was distraught. But I had this woman who was amazing. She was amazing to me. But then she started to reveal who she was. The day before my mom's funeral, which was in Florida, by the way. So we drove from Georgia to Florida. I drove down a couple days before she did because I needed to help out with the funeral arrangements and stuff. And then my friend's mom drove down the night before the funeral. So the night before the funeral, we actually had my mom's wake. And I had curled my hair, to try to look presentable when I went to the wake. However, y'all, that funeral home was hot. And I'm not even talking about regular hot. I'm talking about spicy hot. Like the air conditioning, it didn't work. It's 14 years later and I can still remember the heat. They had maybe some box fans or whatever it is, but whatever the case may be, my hair sweated out. I was crying. I was getting hugged up by my family and stuff. So my hair sweated out. And by the time I got back to my aunt's house, and which is where my friend's mom met us, I probably looked a hot mess, but that was the last thing on my mind. I was grieving. I was more concerned with the fact that my mom died than I was about how I looked. My friend's mom entered my aunt's house. She greeted everybody. She was kind. And then when everybody was out of earshot, she looked at me with the utmost disgust. And she told me that I ought to be ashamed of myself for allowing my hair to sit on top of my head like that. And I just remember just feeling an instant shame. And I just, dropped my head. And when I looked back up and I made eye contact with her, for a split second, it looked like she smirked. And I said to myself, well, no, that's not the case. She didn't smirk. She understands what I'm going through. This isn't funny. I'm grieving. She didn't smirk at me. However, this became my reality for the next 11 years. When we were alone, or when people were out of earshot or in passive aggressive ways, she would devalue everything about me, from the way I looked. She would talk about my skin. She would talk about my teeth not being straight or not white enough, or she talked about me being overweight. She was just extremely cruel to me behind closed doors. However, she was so nice to me in public. And every time I told people what was going on, they didn't know what I was talking about. So I just assumed I was crazy or making it up in my head. But with each year, it got worse and worse. And also, as time progressed too, she stopped actually doing nice things for me, period. And I realized probably about year 3 or 4 that I was in a one-sided relationship with her. I was going over to her house, cleaning up, running errands, whatever it is she wanted me to do. And she was not really doing anything to me other than just being kind in public, yet being vicious and hateful towards me in private. And because I didn't get the validation, I stayed in the situation too long. I'll be honest. And the longer I stayed in the situation, the worse she got. And by year 11, I realized that not only was she being unkind to me behind closed doors, but she had also smeared my name and ruined my reputation in our friend circle. So I didn't have anybody at that point. I lost my friends. Even the friends and stuff that I had met through her, I didn't realize at the same time she had smeared my name with those people too. And so by 2019, I didn't know what to do. I was just so distraught. And so I heard a voice in my head tell me to respect her, but don't engage in any conversation. That voice said that anything you say to her, she uses against you. And if you want to test it, I can show you. So I said, okay, let's test it. So she came by that day. She would come by every day around the same time, around 2 p.m. She would stop by and visit me and my son. I had a newborn at the time. And she would stop by. And sure enough, I realized that the stuff I had said to her maybe the previous conversation or the one before that, she would use against me. You know, I might tell her something like, because my son was tall, so I might say, you know, I need to get him some new pants before he grows out of his pants. And if she came back over that next time he had on a pair of pants that weren't long enough, she would say something like, I don't know how a parent would allow their child to wear high-water pants. Like, what kind of is that? You know, she would say things like that. And so I realized that, wait a minute, that must have been the Lord that I heard that told me to, you know, respect her, don't small talk. And so I did just that. I would say hello to her when she came in, and I would say nothing else. I did it the first time, y'all. I kid you not, the lady left in less than 5 minutes. She wasn't even there 5 minutes. She waited a couple days, came back. I said hello. I ain't say nothing to her. She left less than 5 minutes. She waited a couple weeks this time. She came back. I said hello. I didn't say nothing else. After that, I promise you, I did not see her again until maybe a month and a half ago. I saw her by mistake, actually. I saw her. We made a brief eye contact, and she looked at me like I was the scum of the earth. However, my validation was no longer tied to her, so I didn't care. I didn't care. If I had been true to myself and listened to that voice in my head in 2008 that told me that she smirked at me and she enjoyed my pain, you know, then I would have realized, wait a minute, she might be kind in public, but she's not so kind to me in an empathetic way. She doesn't care about what I'm going through. She only cares about superficial things. And it never dawned on me. And the fact that, like I said, when I started telling people and nobody validated my experience, they didn't know what the heck I was talking about, I said, you know, well, hey, well, God, I guess your girl crazy. You know, I guess I'm a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. However, God, he gave me that advice. I followed it. And let me tell you what happened. 3 years, y'all. I kid you not. 3 years straight. I worked for 3 separate companies. I worked for Starship, which is a sex shop. I'm being honest. I worked at a sex shop. Secondly, I worked at Edible Arrangements. And then third, I worked for a dealership hospitality company. All 3 of those jobs, within 2 weeks of working them, I moved up to a manager position. The sex shop, I was there 2 weeks. The lady asked me, did I want to join the manager and training program? There were people who had been there for years. I told her yes, even though I didn't stay long because it it weighed on my conscience after a while. I ended up leaving, 4 or 5 months into the job. I had moved up. So 2 weeks manager in training, 2 months, I was assistant manager. I do believe if I had stayed past that 5 months, I probably would have been the store manager at the sex shop. That's one job. I left that sex shop, y'all. I ain't even put in the 2 weeks notice. I walked out that thing at 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, yeah, let me get up out of here. And I left, okay? Second job, Edible Arrangements. I started that job in June. In November, I got assistant manager position. And that next March, I became the store manager. I got tired of that job too, y'all. I walked out too. I promise you, I did not put in the 2 weeks notice. I walked out. I started another job for a dealership hospitality company. 2 weeks into it, I got promoted into the manager and training program. And 3 months later, I was the account manager at this dealership. I was working at Nissan and I moved forward to Ford. I also did some stuff at Lexus and stuff as well. Moral of the story is I had been trying to get a management job for years. I had been trying to, but I had somebody in my ear bringing me down and dragging my confidence down. The moment I listened to God and allowed him to remove her from my life, my dreams came true. It had to be God. There's no other way around it. You are looking at somebody that doesn't even have a high school diploma. I don't even have a high school diploma, baby. I got a GED. I didn't even have any previous management experience. At all three of these jobs, there were people who had degrees and management experience that they overlooked for me. I know it was God. And so I am telling you, do what he tell you to do. Cut them jokers off, baby, and thrive. I'll talk to you next time. I gotta go.